What game are you talking about?
I don't know. Never heard of
Because
it.
the one you're talking about, I don't think I've heard of that game before.
So now live streaming, although the camera just pointed at me, so I can't see you guys.
Right.
But
So there's no cussing, no cursing, no name
I'll
calling.
just kind of avoid that if you would. What I'm doing is this is going to be live streamed for now. Probably nobody's watching, but there might be because I know that the game store in Morgan City sometimes puts live stream events up on their thing. Probably not this, but because it was kind of short notice, I just got the idea of doing this
last week.
a couple hours ago. Well, of live streaming it because my idea was I was going to kind of do a workshop helping people to DM because I really want to get more people into DMing.
So you can play too?
So I can play too, yeah. I mean, I like to play. When I was so a little bit about I guess my background is I've been playing role-playing games for over 30 years. So I was 12 years old in 1982 when I got started with like the very first edition of D&D. I was not always the game master or the dungeon master. I often was, not always. I was lucky. I didn't know how good I had it. But when I was in high school and college, I was with a group of people who were all good game masters. And so we took turns a lot, so it rotated a lot. So that's kind of what I'm trying to build up as a community of people who can all step in and do some game mastering, dungeon mastering for D&D. And what I've learned more recently is that it's a skill just like any other, so you can be learned. It's not magic. You know, it's not raw inborn talent. Some of it is. I mean, I'm pretty good, but so what I did was I prepared my own little booklet, my own little guide on how to DM. We're going to kind of go through this and go through some other stuff here. I made 5 of them, and there happen to be 5 people. How about that? Just as if I planned it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the first thing, that's not it. That's my rolling up characters. There should be an extra one around here somewhere.
Is there an extra one?
Is there?
She's not paying attention. No, don't look like it.
What? And I printed up 5, but then I had my original. Okay, does anybody mind sharing one? These are all.
What was that thing on the bottom? The bullets of different.
Yeah, see, this is rolling up the character. So that's a different one. This is the DM.
Are we going to be talking about that too?
Maybe we have time. So can y'all share one, or Alex, because Alex has already reviewed it too. Yeah, he's my proofreader.
Yes, I'm such a great proofreader.
Well, your input was very valuable. You really helped me out a lot on the character generation one. Pretty much every idea that he had, every suggestion I implemented. Now, the first thing I got to tell you is I've got to give credit to this website where most of this material can be found. Most of my ideas about how to be a good GM come from this website. It's called theangrygm.com. It's mentioned at the top. I really recommend you go check it out. It has awesome advice, and pretty much you're going to see a lot of what I talk about here is going to be on the website. But he breaks it down. I remember when Alex first checked out the website and started reading some of the articles.
I read exactly one article.
And he said, I feel like my DMing IQ went up 50 points. It was an awesome article.
Yeah, it is.
151.
But what was the article that you read?
It's a lot about one of the parts in this, which is, it was called The 5 Rules to Dating My Teenage Skill System.
Oh, yeah.
So, for example, when you get to page.
Yeah, so we'll get to that.
Right.
Let's go in order. All right. So the first thing you see here being and if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a link to this booklet on the YouTube. You know,
You have
you
it
see
on Twitch too?
Huh?
You have a link on in the
Well, it's not gonna be Twitch because I didn't put up a link yet, but once I put it on YouTube, it's gonna have a link that you can click on to download this guide so you can follow along at home. But all right, so being a DM in a nutshell. Number one rule is for everyone to have fun, including you as a DM, but it's for everybody to have fun. You're there to facilitate. It's like you're the host of a party. Okay, you're facilitating a good time for everyone to have. You're empowered to make decisions to help it be more fun. And the next point about what it means to have fun in the sense of an RPG. Fun in an RPG is about the ability to make meaningful choices. That's what role-playing is. Okay? So, what makes a role-playing game fun is that you get to make decisions for your character. And your decisions have meaning. And they have consequences. If your decisions don't have any consequences, if it doesn't matter which thing you decide, then you're not going to care about making the decision. You're going to feel cheated. Some people call that railroading. The DM will tell you, well, this is what's going to happen. This is, it's like, and you're just along for the ride. That's really bad DMing. Okay. It basically means that the players don't get to make any decisions. Yeah.
Couldn't the DM say one thing and just completely go off to another one to kind of go,
That's what I do.
like in like Shyamalan style thing?
It's kind of like
Sure.
that's bad railroading.
Well, no, I mean, there could be plot twists.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's like you don't
Sure.
like you tell everything they expect that to happen, then you just start changing things up, out of order things.
Oh, yeah. Well, it doesn't. I'm not saying that there can't be things that are unexpected, or that their actions might not have unintended consequences. You press the button, and it. Well, like we had this game, the last game that we played in. Basically, press the button and it made the floor fall out, and everyone gets sucked into a hole. Well, no one saw that coming, but it was a consequence. You didn't have to press the button. You did. But,
Yeah, you do.
Well, actually, you did have to press the button.
You
Otherwise, you
have
wouldn't go
to
anywhere.
press the button. They don't put buttons up.
Yeah,
for
sooner or later, someone had to press the button, or the eventually wasn't going to go anywhere. But players are predictable.
Was it a red button?
Hmm?
Was it a
That was
red
a
button?
little stone button.
Did it see what's up? You might press this button.
But basically, fun is about giving your players meaningful choices. If they don't get to make decisions, and those decisions don't mean anything, they're not going to have fun. Okay, the next thing is prep equals speed, slow is boring. All right. What is game prep? All right, we're going to talk about a lot about game prep, but the bottom line is it's about doing the organization you need to be able to run the game fast. So you don't have to flip through pages of the books. You don't have to look up monsters. You don't have to look up spells. Oh, you're watching my stream. Cool. Hi.
You got one viewer.
I have one viewer. Hey. The internet connection here has got to be like.
1980s.
Well, we're sucking up all the bandwidth here because I've got bandwidth. I got video going up, video coming down here, video going to you.
No, because mine is off my cell. Saw that.
Oh, it's off your cell. Oh, wow.
But this has not to die.
It's nice.
But the point is, the reason why you prep is so that you can run the game fast. That tip does not come from the Angry GM, by the way. That's all me.
Or angry GM.
Okay. Because every time you stop to look something up, everybody is sitting there waiting for you. So every time the game stops, people are twiddling their thumbs. Twiddling their thumbs means they're not doing anything fun. So you want to minimize the amount of time that you spend looking crap up and looking for the rules. looking for miniatures, maps, looking for all that kind of crap.
Rendering maps.
Our stop and do like I did, and you got a monster that's fixing to kill a party, and you have to stop and look up that information because you forgot something, and they already got it planned out how to kill it.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's bad.
Yeah, so yeah, that all goes to prep, and y'all can tell the difference between the games where I prep, I do a lot of prep, and I don't do much prep. The games where I don't do a lot of prep, I'm flipping through the book. The game takes twice as long as it really should. And but when I am prep, that's when everything runs pretty smoothly, runs fast. And if I have time, I have like handouts or like pictures, like this is the monster you're fighting. Or, yeah, actually I did that for tonight's adventure. This is the monster that you'll be fighting. So,
Show the screen.
Is that part of the?
so I don't know if they can see that. It's a horrible thing.
Is that part of the Home Series Adventures?
It's part of Elemental Evil. It's the season Elemental Evil so it's in the Adventurers League. Adventurers League is divided up into seasons. So we're now in the third season.
We're still using the second season.
This is the second season. This is the second season of Adventure.
Okay, I was going to ask that's the same adventure as your wife.
Yeah, you can run older seasons to a point. Now, at some point they retire, but certainly the previous season you can run without any problem. The current season stuff I'm kind of trying to save for like special events. I want to run through all the old season stuff before we can't use it anymore. And I like the Elemental Evil one. So the Elemental Evil season is the one where you're based in Mulmaster, which is like a really evil city. The next one is, the current one is Out of the Abyss, where you're fighting demons in the Underdark, and you're also centered around a kind of evil city. I don't know, there's something about all the cities are evil in this place or something about it. But anyway. Okay, so as a DM, this you'll get from the Angry GM website. You have 3 jobs as a GM. Your task can be divided into 3 things: adjudication, narration, role-playing, and the NPC. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one. Adjudication is basically making rulings. All right, so it's saying this is the rule, this is how it's going to work. Now, in starting out, you don't really have to master all of the rules. Let me get my player's handbook out. Yeah. Alright, so this is the player's handbook, which contains most of the rules that you'll need. And it's like 200-something pages, right?
It's actually more like 400 pages.
No, it's like 288 pages. Okay. It's good to know the rules. My hobby is reading rule books. All right, I will sit there and read a gaming rule book, and I'll tell you why. When I first got started in gaming, it was here in Homa, and nobody else had any of these games. So I had games that required like 4 or 5 players that I was the only one who could play. So I would sit there reading rule books, and I'd reread the rule books and reread the rule books. So I've become very familiar with the rules. But you don't really need to do that to be a DM. It helps, but you don't really need it. For starting out, there are 3 things that you need to know about. It's Chapter 7, Chapter 9, and then the rules of the Adventurers League, which is something that you can download. It's like 20 pages or something like that. Chapter 7 is using ability scores. All right. So basically, in Chapter 9 is combat. So it's basically those are the rules for adjudicating, for deciding what happens next. So when a player says, "I'm going to do this," well, what happens? Well, those are the rules to decide what happens. So you should really be familiar with at least those. It helps to know all the spells and all the. But here's the thing: you can offload that to the players. So if someone's playing a wizard and they've got like a gazillion spells, and you don't know how they work, You tell them, you need to know how your spells work. You tell me how they work, okay? If you have somebody that you trust that knows the rules, and they're like in the game, you can ask them, hey, what's the rule for such and such? Oh, okay, you know. So that's one of the tips up when you're assigning a rules lawyer. Basically, have someone there who can like say, oh yeah, well it's blah blah blah, and yeah, okay, that's usually going to be me if I'm a player. You know,
Usually.
people will usually, if I'm playing, they'll say, hey, what's the rule for whatever? The DM will ask me, what's the rule for whatever? I'll tell them. You know, sometimes it's good for me, sometimes it's not. But a big part of adjudication is making rulings when nobody knows what the rule is, or there isn't a rule. Okay, a lot of times there isn't. I mean, 300 something, almost 300 pages, and there isn't really a rule for everything. There can't be. So there are a few tricks that you can use, but basically what I put in here is like see what everybody thinks would be a good idea. You know, should we do it this way or that way? Everybody says, no, let's do it that way. Okay, let's go with it. The main thing is be quick about it. Okay, don't waste a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what the right rule is, because this can bog the game down or about to be bored. All right. So go as fun and fair. And one thing to think about is ask the player, well, how would you like it if it were reversed? So if I had a monster come and do the same thing to you, and that was the rule, would you be all right with that? And if they said, okay, well, okay, all right, well, let's do it that way then. If the player wants to, they can look up the rule and let you know in the next round of combat or something to come back. But let them look up the rules when it's not their turn. All right. If it's their turn and they're looking up rules, everybody's waiting on that person. All right. And we don't want to sit around waiting for some person to like figure out what the rules are. So just do something right now, and then look it up while everyone else is having their turn, and then we come back to you. You know, do whatever. This last thing is be fair, roll in the open. This is actually a point of controversy among DMs. A lot of DMs will roll behind screens, and I've done it before. I used to roll behind a screen so I could fudge the roll to keep the players alive, you know, keep it interesting and all that. But the angry DM had a really good argument for why you should always roll in the open, and that is because you don't want your players to be. You don't want to cheat your players, basically. I mean, if after the game, you told like if I told you after the game, well, you know, I actually rolled where your character should have died, but I didn't really want to do that to you, so I fudged the rolls, so you know, so you live, yay. Yeah, you kind of feel a little bit cheated, right? I mean, it'd be like you didn't really earn the victory. You know, it was like, well, you know, so. You know, basically let the dice fall where they may, basically. And that does a couple of things. One is they know that you're not cheating either for or against them. And another is that the players know that there's not going to be any help. They're on their own, and if they screw up and die, they die. So it makes things a lot more tense, a lot scarier, you know, because it's like, you know, that orc can roll a 20. You know?
The goat.
The
demonic goat.
That demonic goat can roll a 20.
Demonic two-headed goat.
And, you know, and crit you.
Or the undead ghost.
An undead ghost can suck the life out of you. You know?
Or you get roasted alive.
Or roasted alive. Well, not the roasting alive. That was Elliot's.
A skeleton can fireball.
But I tell you what, both times I was very tempted. So there was 2 times that I totally killed a character, just in the last couple of weeks. And both times I was tempted. I was very tempted to cheat and to say, oh, well, you didn't really die. But
because you rolled in the open.
But, and because, I mean, you gotta, if bad things don't happen sometimes, then it kind of loses the excitement. You know what I mean? So when you have a character, the exciting thing about the game is that bad thing, you could die. You have to be careful. But if you know that every time some character would have died, the GM fudges so nobody ever dies, well, what's the point? Yeah. I was going to say something else.
Everyone's going to make it through the adventure because everyone knows that the
if you know from the outside, if you know from the outside, hey, everybody's going to survive. So I mean, where's the thrill of adventure? I might as well just read the book or whatever. But actually, there were a couple of tips that I left out in here of just like how to make quick rulings. In this game, there's a couple of mechanics that are really easy to use. One of them is advantage and disadvantage. So just use that as a way of like if someone comes up with something that's not in the rules, just say, okay, that gives you advantage, or that gives you disadvantage, and just roll with that. All right. The other thing that's interesting about the rules, in the flexibility that it gives you as a DM, is the way that skills and abilities are actually separated. So, for example, stealth doesn't always have to be a dex roll. Okay, and the older versions of the game, stealth was dex. Period. You have your dex points and you have your stealth points, and that's been you're done. That's your stealth roll. But what if someone is being sneaky by using their brain? They come up with some idea of outsmarting the other person to get around them and that kind of thing. You might say, how do you roll for that? Well, okay, roll stealth intelligence, and then that way they roll their intelligence check and they add their, because all the skills is the bonus from your
proficiency
it's
bonus
a proficiency
plus bonus.
So all that having a skill means is that you get to add a proficiency bonus to your attribute roll. So you roll your attribute roll, if you have the skill, you add a proficiency bonus. If you don't, you don't. So let's say you have the skill, you have like a high intelligence, and you have the stealth skill. You could justify if you say something really weird. It's like, well, that's not really that's not really in the rules, but okay, we'll roll with that. We'll run with that. Roll intelligence stealth, Or I mean, you can do some weird combinations like that just to cover just about everything.
Another example.
Speak by angry gazebo.
Another example might be if you're trying to solve a puzzle, but you're not really using your hands, it's more using your brain. You could say, roll sleight of hand, intelligence, instead.
Okay.
I have my evil pebble I could use.
You might even have constitution, because there's no skills tied to constitution. But you can think of situations where you might have constitution.
You ate poison.
That's usually how constitution is used as a saving throw.
You ate poison. But you can roll save your life, or you can die.
But what if you're making a stealth roll? Here's another stealth example. What if you're making a stealth roll to stay absolutely motionless for hours? That might be a constitution stealth roll.
Let's say you're an idol.
Yeah, constitution would be for endurance. So anything that's endurance, you
But,
roll constitution.
Let's say within you're idle, like in a town or something like that, and you guys play a game within a game. You can roll Constitution for a game rules and how bad it's really not.
Yeah, well, there was in the last adventure we ran, there was a situation that was abstracted into a dex roll and a Constitution roll. It was basically there were these ripples that were coming at you, and you had to get over them. So you dex roll to jump over them successfully, Constitution roll not to be totally exhausted by the end of getting at the end of the thing. So.
Some of us made it, some of us didn't.
So there's there's a lot of so basically, when in doubt, come up with an attribute and skill combination and run with it.
When in doubt, trust Constitution.
I didn't lose my
Yeah.
endurance.
When in doubt, con save.
Alright, so let's talk about narration.
Ah, yes.
So next thing is narration. So your job as a DM is to set the scene, is to explain what players see.
Storytelling.
Storytelling. Keep things short and simple, and repetition is okay. Now, a lot of these adventures have these box texts, which are useful, but don't be too glued to them, because they're usually very long-winded.
It's a forest. It's a
Yeah.
mountain. It's a dungeon. They
But
all
you
look the
don't-
same.
But you don't have to, you don't have to go into like a whole lot of words. You can describe,
Oh,
you're in
eerie.
a spooky
Isolated.
graveyard at night. The wind is whistling through the trees. The gate is, So I mean, you can set the scene with very, very few words, and people let their imaginations do the work. Okay, so
It shouldn't be too hot.
it doesn't take very much. Repetition is fine. In fact, I'll repeat, repetition is fine a lot in this thing. Because basically what you're going to want to do is reset the scene to remind people, because they can't see. You have to tell them what's there. Because
normally, what's in your head, they don't know exactly what's in your head. So you have to keep repeating it so that the characters, because that's what they see when they look around. So the next point is restating the obvious. It's called restating the obvious as the point. When players seem like they want to do something stupid, it usually means. Now I think the game that we had, like the first game at the library, the guy wanted. Were you there when the guy threw himself into
Island Fire.
he was trying to kill himself? He was suicidal. He was like he wanted to kill himself.
Yeah, he
Like,
jumped off.
Dropped off the ledge.
Yeah, he jumped off onto the ledge.
But he was suicidal or whatever. He was just being a jerk. But anyway.
Fighting him.
But usually
No, it was a tiger.
But usually when somebody is about to do something you think it's now I've had DMs who were jerks who would if you said something that you do that and you end up doing something stupid
Dying.
like dying or like one adventure was okay, well we trek off to the to the ruins through the forest or whatever. It's okay, well nobody said y'all packed, your food and equipment and all that. So you're out in the middle of the forest with nothing. It's wait a minute. I mean, come on.
And there's no ranger amongst you.
Yeah, so, stupid things like that. But basically, if it sounds like they want to do something stupid, restate what you think is obvious. So say it, say it.
That could have been why Beth kept saying that goats are demonic.
Because usually
She wanted us to kill him.
Because usually it's a miscommunication. Usually they missed something that you told them. Because look, a lot of things are going on, and people are looking at their character sheets and stuff like that, and they can easily miss something. So, it's a miscommunication.
I'm gonna go get a drink.
All right.
I like 1, 2, 3.
I like 1, 2, please.
Coke.
Can I have something?
Coke.
Right.
Coke.
Dr. Pepper. You
Sake?
Coke and Dr. Pepper.
And this probably should go in adjudication, but always it's like that I have to remember the characters know what they're doing. They're professional adventurers. So if they say something and they leave details out, I mean assume that the characters do the sensible thing. Don't say, oh well you never said that you blah blah blah, so you didn't, so you die or whatever. Assume that the characters know stuff. All right. So, so whenever there's a doubt.
So you can have. I'm gonna take a Sprite.
Oh, I thought you wanted to work right.
I guess give me Coke.
Do you want to do?
No. So basically, whenever there's a doubt about what a player plans to do or is intending, assume that they're doing the smart thing, not the dumb thing. So.
You have any illustrations?
Well, other than the one I just gave you about the going out into the woods with no equipment.
Remember Tiger on the way from the bathroom?
No.
Hey,
I actually do have good examples. When you give the druid a seed, you state several times seed is evil, and the druid in the middle of the bar decides to water it. And
Oh God, no, no. That's
it's stated several
You gotta
times.
ultimately horribly or overpower and kill him.
My druid actually.
I never handle. I'm either overpower killing.
It was a random chaotic thought. I can't. It was something my character had to do.
So what's left?
Buffalo, Island Fire, and Sweet Asian. And garlic.
All right. So now I'm going to give you the secret formula for setting a scene. Okay. It's a secret. Well, it's a secret formula that you can always use to describe a scene that's always going to work, and it's always going to impress your players, and will always set things just right. And it's a very simple formula. So it's basically 4 steps. Okay. So you describe the overall scene in one sentence. It's a spooky.
It's a salty bar.
So just one very quick, simple, keep it simple kind of thing. It's a spooky cemetery.
It's
All right.
spooky even midnight. If you're a kid, you
Yeah.
don't know what a salty bar is, so you have to be careful of those things.
And actually, the cemetery example is exactly what the angry GM used in his article about narration. Is it's a spooky cemetery.
That's an
Okay.
very.
Second thing, so basically you give people 4 sentences, all right? The first one is the overall description. It's a spooky cemetery. The next thing is one interesting but useless feature, all right? Something like, you hear the rustling of the trees from the wind,
There is a grave that is
Okay.
cracked in half.
Now,
There's a jump guy at the
the
bar.
next thing is what I call the exits, okay, or the options. So one sentence for each option. Okay, so after you gave the general description, you gave some useless detail. Now you start going through a list of there's a door to the north, there's a door to the east, there are stairs going up. Okay, so you run through the obvious options that they see.
There's a hole in the ground that's covered in soft earth.
And then the last thing, the very last thing is you give the most pressing, the biggest, scariest problem last. Okay, so the last thing you say is, and there's a giant troll with an axe about to swing it at your head.
And the jump guy has.
What do you do?
The jump guy has.
And then what do you do? All right, that's scene setting. So why? Let me ask y'all. Why do you say? Because some people say, well, why didn't you tell us that first? You told us about whistling trees and shit like that. Well,
Pay attention to the setting.
bingo! That's exactly right. Because as soon as you say there's a giant troll about to swing at your head, what do? You stop listening. Oh my God, there's a giant troll about to swing at my head. Nothing else matters. You don't care, right? It's like, okay, yeah, fine, there's the door here, door there. There's a troll about to swing at my head.
Oh boy.
Now,
So-
that's not always true. Because when your wife described that one fight to me,
Well, she didn't use my formula.
I was going to say, I asked very quickly, did they notice us? No. Then I cast.
So it's something like
Well, yeah, well, they don't always notice.
Thaumaturgy.
It could be,
Thaumaturgy is a powerful spell.
it could be, and you see 2 orcs sitting at the table playing cards. They don't seem to notice you. Whatever the situation is, the most urgent, biggest problem, you save for last. Whatever the problem is, okay? It could be, and the cliff, you have to get to the top of it and it looks unclimbable. But whatever it is, you save that for last. And then you say, okay, what do? So you've laid now the players in their heads. You see, the first thing you do is you set the overall description to give them kind of a framework, and then they start. So they have a big picture, and then with each sentence in their mind, they're filling in the blanks. They're filling in what's going on in their mind. Okay. Now,
So
after after anything major happens, you reset the scene. So there's 2 orcs sitting at the table. Okay, we jump on them and stab them and kill them. Okay, roll initiative, and you have the whole big battle, blah, 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 blah. As soon as the battle is over and the dust clears, you reset the scene. Okay, now you're in the guard room. There's a door to the north, a door to the east, 2 dead orcs on the floor. You know, you're bleeding from a cut on your arm. Okay, whatever.
You're about
So
to die.
you set, you know, so basically you reset. So you start again with the same formula: general description, minor detail, exits or options. You know, there's a green button, there's a blue button, there's a
Well, you
you know,
take
there's
the
stairs
red pill?
going up.
On the blue pill.
And do you heal? That was a very
And then-
important question. Do you
So
even heal?
what do you do? You know,
So
and then they should tell you, you know, well, we're gonna take a break, we're gonna blah 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 blah.
Not
But
a
anytime
lot of
you
it is.
you reset the
DM
scene.
asks you if you're going to heal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
something like
heal.
this. You're in
So-
an old saloon, and then
Old saloon.
and there are 2 people in the corner playing cards. There's the exit behind you. There's the exit on the side of you. The exit next to the counter, and there's a one-eyed purple people eater ready to eat you up.
There you go. That's exactly right. That is the formula. And that'll work every time. And the players won't notice unless, of course, they, you know.
You do it over and over again.
Well, no, unless they've read this guide or, you know, either. But even then, no, it'll still work because it works. It's you know, it's efficient and they should appreciate it. They should say, he's using the formula. And I love it. It's
Boba
great.
Fett says so.
That's right, Boba Fett. Listen to Boba Fett.
But look at that guy. He's
Um,
a giant worm.
So,
Unless you read the series and then he climbs out of the worm and goes on to kill
then he's
Jabba's
like,
brother or
awesome.
something like that.
So basically, an adventure is a series of scenes. All right, just like in a movie, you have scene after scene after scene. Now there are transitions. So the next thing we'll talk about is a transition from one scene to another. And it's basically you close out the scene. So that is, you say, you know, okay, you leave the bar, or okay, you leave the room, or whatever. You know, that scene. You say something, that scene is now over. So transition. There's 3 steps basically. You end the scene. You explain whatever time and space has passed. So, all right, so you walk for an hour down the street, and now it's 2 in the afternoon. Okay, and now you're
You're hungry.
you're 2 miles down the street.
It's
And then
starving.
the third thing is you set the new scene. So now you're at the gates, and there's guard towers. There's the gate in front of you. There's the road behind you. And there's 2 guards that are checking your bags. You know, what do you do?
Okay,
What
so
the
got
fuck?
their hands, got their heads and
Yeah. So that's basically how you use transitions. Now, this last thing, I haven't used this very much, this epic battle narration technique. But when I have used it, it was pretty awesome. And I don't think I got this from. I don't remember where I got this from, but I got this idea from somebody from YouTube, and I don't remember if it was Angry GM or if it was one of the other GMs that I refer to.
The not so angry GM.
But this is really cool,
the happy people.
and this is basically to spice up a battle. Okay, so if you want to make the battle just this feel like this really epic encounter, all right? Because there's basically the traditional way of doing a battle is okay, it's your turn. What do you do? Okay, well I attack. I swing my sword at it. Okay, roll. Okay, you hit. All right, you hit it. Boom. All right, what's your turn? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, what this does is this is narration during the battle. So once Michael says, okay, I attacked the sword, I hit it with it, then you go ahead and describe it. Okay, Gronog the Barbarian steps up and slashes it out with a sword. Just doesn't have to be anything big. Just just a quick little narration of exactly what you just did, using the character's name. Okay. Then the next person, they say what they're going to do, and so what you do is you incorporate what they do by referring back to the other one. So as Gronog swings his sword, Milea, the archer, fires her bow. And so basically, as you go around to the different turns, you say things like that, referring back as this happens. So that way, it doesn't feel like, okay, my turn, I step and move. Next person steps and moves, swings sword. Everyone's just kind of standing there waiting for their turn. Instead, because really, in a turn, all this is happening at once.
6 seconds.
It's a 6-second slice of time. So all this is really happening at the same time. So to get that feeling of all this is like, all this major battle is happening at the same time. All you have to do is go back, like the last couple of turns, and say, okay, as this happens, and as this happens, okay? So just that one little thing, and like I said, I haven't done it a lot, but I'm trying to incorporate that more. I forget to do that sometimes. But when I have done it, it was like, it made for a pretty awesome battle. So I really like that.
Alex the Great rides into his voice as he slays the evil monster.
Alright, so let's talk about role-playing the NPCs. This is the third thing y'all need to know to be a DM. Okay? Role-playing is not active. Role-playing is not active, okay? You don't have to be a Shakespearean drama professional to get up and go, hark! I singeth my sword.
Defies or not
defies. Okay? You don't really have to do any of that. You don't have to put on a silly voice. You don't have to wear a costume, although that would be kind of cool.
We should do that.
But,
I'm Egypt.
LARPing, yeah, or cosplay. It's probably cosplay is more common at the conventions and stuff, where you dress up as a character,
NPC.
and then you sit down and play that character, or whatever. I don't know. I've never done it, so
I was at the black wig,
But
I dress up as a salty barmaid.
Hey, you're my dog. I go to the character.
Wow.
but basically, it's not active. So but what is role playing? Basically, role playing is making decisions for the NPC. So it's putting yourself in the place of the NPC and deciding what would that person do in this situation. And really, the only things you need to know just a couple of things. You need to know what they want and what they're afraid of. All right. So what are their motivations and what are their fears?
They want money and they don't want their hands chopped off.
Most people don't want to die. Most people are smart enough to avoid death if they can.
If you're gonna insult, you need to use the flaky or belly or bomb.
So now, you don't really. You can always just say, okay, well the bartender, you don't have to like, hey matey, here's your drink. You don't always have to do it. Sometimes it's nice, we don't have to do that all the time. We say, okay, the bartender is this old grumpy guy. He gives you a drink and he asks you what you want. Blah, blah, blah. You don't have to put on a voice. It's kind of personal. It is kind of fun. And this next part, giving flavor to an NPC, this is a simple way of making an NPC seem like you're putting on this great character. Okay?
Only a few seconds.
And it's very simple. And you don't have to make up this huge background. You don't have to put on a big show. Here's all you got to do. And what I'll do is I'll put this on a 3x5 card. Okay? You'll see that I use 3x5 cards a lot. It's like, here's all my prep for this adventure. It's all on a bunch of 3x5 cards.
Can I see the examples?
Hmm?
Can I see the examples?
No, actually I didn't do this for any of these characters. But it's basically, if there's an NPC that you want to add a little color to, that you want to stand out, and I wouldn't do it for more than like 1 or 2 NPCs per session, if even that. But like once or twice per session, where they meet an NPC that you want to really bring them to life, and you want the players later to say, oh man, that's amazing. He brought that character to life, and I could see him, and it's just like it's a real person. And it's like stupid easy to do. Here it is. So the first thing is you come up with one word that describes their overall personality. Okay? Lazy, grumpy, crotchety, okay? Depressed, happy,
Sad.
okay? There's,
Hyper.
yeah, hyper.
Lust-filled.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
Yeah.
All right. So you come exactly.
You
So
could just use lady for that one.
yeah. So you just come up with like one word that sums it up. And that way, because like, look, when you're trying to think of what the character's doing or saying, you don't want to have to look through a long paragraph. You want one word that sums it up, so that you can act that one word, and people will remember. Oh yeah, that was that NPC. That was that flirty NPC who blah blah blah. Okay. They'll remember that. You don't have to say, oh, the NPC is flirty. You can just do something that sounds flirty, and they'll get the idea. Posture. All right, so that's the physical posture that you would take when you're acting that role. Okay? So, for example, if I'm playing, and I might write this down on the card, if I'm playing like a military captain, he always stands like this.
Attention.
And he's like, well, civilian, blah, 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 you know. Or it could be like hunched over. So every time you take that physical posture as you're talking, it like brings that character like, yes, I can help you. You know.
My
So,
Eat God, go to the left.
so you just put down this a quick, the posture that you take when you assume that character. It could, like I said, it could be lots of different things. It could be, nice to meet you. Okay, it could be, so it could be a lot of different weird things. Pause, short word or phrase or gesture to buy time. Now, what that means is sometimes you need time to think. Okay, so you need time to think of what the character is going to say. And everybody has, like in the real world, when they're trying to think of something to say, they have something that they do to buy time. They might say, or or whatever. So you think about what this character might do to buy time, and it might be, they look up, fold their arms, and they look up. And they say, well, Okay, so that little one thing. So whenever you need time to think of what the character says, well, I guess I can help you. Okay, so just throw this little thing you could throw in there. Fidget. So that is some habit or quirk that they have that they do a lot. So it might be like tapping their fingers a lot, or rubbing their hands. So when you take on the character, if I stoop over and I go, that's a very different character from, yes. And I could use the same voice. But it would be a very different person. All right?
I can.
So you see, it's very
They're
simple.
all related in this town.
And the last thing is voice. So if you want to think about, there's a lot of ways to change your voice without really doing a lot of work. And it's very simple ways is just slowing down the speed in which you talk. So the character, this NPC, might be very thoughtful, and so he speaks slowly. Okay?
I can see.
I see your point.
I
Alright?
can see it.
So there's things that you can change your speed, change the pitch of your voice, be more breathy. You be breathy or not breathy. You could take on a funny accent. You put down
Alex.
speaks with a Cockney accent.
What is it again?
Or something stupid like that. You don't have to be good at accents. Just
Have fun.
Yeah,
How
just
do
have
you
fun.
say I could help you?
All right. Oh man. So what do y'all think so far? Y'all getting anything good out of this?
That is very big.
Alright. So the next thing I want to do is talk about the Anatomy of Adventurers League module. I brought a module with me. And I don't remember if I meant to talk about the 3-ring binder. This is really the best way to prepare an adventure, is hole punch it, put it in a 3-ring binder. It just makes it so much easier. I've tried a lot of different ways. I tried having the sheets loose and they just go all crazy. I tried just having it stapled and they get all, you have to flip the thing around and all this kind of stuff. 3-ring binder is where it's at. Now, here's what I'm going to do for you as DMs. When you have an adventure, or when you're ready to DM an adventure, I will print it out, I will hole punch it, and I will put it in a binder and give you the binder. Okay?
I'll lose that binder.
And and with a little pocket thingy in it too, so you can put stuff in it. All right? Actually, probably gonna make Alex put it all together. But the point is,
Slave.
that you'll have a binder with the adventure in it that you can use to prepare, and you'll be good to go. Okay? I will do that for you because I want other people to DM. So,
He wants to have fun.
I want to. I do have fun DMing, but it's work. It is hard work.
We put a lot on you.
Because, I mean, think about it this way.
We enjoy your hard work.
When you're playing a game, you're playing D&D, you're basically on stage, like, if you're 5 players, you're on stage like 1/5 of the time. And the rest of the time, you can kind of chill and listen to what's going on. If you're the DM, you're on stage the entire time. All right, which means you have to be on, you have to be on your feet, you have to think. Here's another DM tip: stay on your feet. Is when you're. This is something that Mom won't do, but she's told me that I'm not going to do that. But it's a lot easier to be high energy and to be able to reach around and do stuff. Like, get to your notes, get to the.
Yeah, I saw the last time I saw the last time you done the master. You didn't have a seat. You just stood and walked around.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very good idea.
Yeah, I think it's good to stay on your feet as Dungeon Master because you want to keep things high energy. You want to keep things moving, and that's the easiest way to keep things moving is by being on your feet.
By moving.
By moving. Because, I mean, look, you're gonna have the map out in the middle. You're gonna have all of your notes. You're gonna have dice. You have food, all this stuff. And like I said, you can't just chill out like all the players do. Between turns, you gotta be doing everything. So,
The next phase, right?
so yeah. So anyway, I'll be happy to prepare one of these for you. To give you one of these so you'll be ready to run your own game. Maybe I should have made copies of this, but let me kind of go through this adventure and show you what it's got in it. The first part is what I call the general organized play stuff. Okay, it's got. This is the adventure that Elwood died in. This is Embers of Elmwood. I chose this one because
We'll be able to
Embers of Elliot.
We'll be able to, if we have time, can we kind of do like practice runs with it if we have time? Like
I'm not
us
sure how we
practicing,
would do that, but
like us practicing DMing it, like all kind of take turns, kind of.
Not today, but
yeah, I don't-
sometimes.
I'm not really sure how that would work. We'll think about it. But yeah, I do want to help y'all in any way I can. I think one way that I can help is when you run your first game, we'll try to limit the table size to like 5 people instead of because the table in organized play, the table can be up to 7 players, and every player after the 4th, 3, 4, 5. 3 or 4 is pretty easy to handle. 5 is getting a little tougher, but then everyone after that makes things a lot harder because that's one other person you got to keep up with. It's like herding cats, y'all. It's like
I didn't know that was possible.
It's like
I've done it.
it's,
It is possible, just one at a time.
so especially starting out, I would see if I can limit the table size. I would also want to make myself available to you while you're prep, so that like if you have questions, or if you want to like you say run through like a kind of quick run through or something, and basically answer questions and kind of help you walk through the preparations and stuff like that. So anyway, the first several pages is what I would call just general organized play stuff. It talks about the adventures, it talks about preparing the adventure, adjusting the. Now this is kind of important. This adjusting the adventure thing. We'll talk about it more in a little bit. And like dungeon mastering the adventure, you are empowered to make adjustments to the adventure, to make decisions about how the group interacts with the world, and blah blah blah. Okay. In other words, not the actual adventure. So the first, and this is still not the actual adventure, 4 pages. Okay, so it's not until page 5 that we actually get to something that's actual specific to the adventure. And that's the adventure background. Now, what I recommend doing is like the first thing you do when you get on these adventures is just read the whole thing straight through. Just and put like notes on the side maybe as you go, but just that you want to really understand the background and the overview. There's the overview section, so you can kind of get the big picture, because players are going to do weird stuff.
They're the cats.
Yeah, and you got to know what the general plan is, so you can help get them back on track. If you don't know the big picture and the background, what's really going on behind the scenes, you might not really know where they need to be, where they need to go to take care of it. There's a section on adventure hooks. Adventure hooks are basically, why are these characters doing this? Why are y'all here? What brought y'all all together? That kind of thing. So it'll have like little hooks like here's one work release. During an early adventure in Maulmaster, one of the arcane spellcasters in the party might have been seen casting spells within the city limits without being a member of the Cloaks. Zora Kolkin has just enough clout to pull a few strings and have the charges drop, with a promise of no more unauthorized arcane magic in the city proper. This is a city where using magic is illegal.
Arcane magic.
Arcane magic specifically. So basically, what brought the characters into the adventure. All right, then it's broken up into parts, usually 2 to 3 parts. So they'll say part 1, and they'll have a title, and then part 2, part 3, okay? So it's got preliminary stuff, and then the adventure parts. All right, so when you're looking at the parts, this is where you want to start. Like after you read through the whole thing and you get an idea of what's what and what the parts are, and there's usually some notes about all this in the adventure, but what you want to do is start figuring out a budget for your time, because it's supposed to be. Now, I've been kind of cheating on this.
Out comes another secret.
Because
Done.
if we were playing like a public organized play game, the session would be 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever, and the adventure would be over at that point. And if you didn't get to the end of it and kill the bad guy and get the magic item and all that kind of stuff and rescue the damsel and save the day, too bad. You just don't get to do it. It's over. It's done. And you don't get to go back and play it with the same character. You can play with a different character, which is kind of an interesting rule. But basically, there's a time limit. And if you screw around and miss out on it. So what we've been doing is we've just been like carrying it on to the next session, because it's been the same group and it's been a private home game and all that. So instead of 5-hour sessions, we've had like 8 to 10-hour sessions. But But in a real organized play game, this adventure is supposed to be, and I'll tell you at the beginning, some of these are, like the one that I prepared for today is actually a 2-hour adventure.
I think it should take 3 hours.
But I've been running 2-hour adventures that have been taking like 4, like Beth, the adventure that y'all did. That was supposed to be a 1-hour adventure to go like 4 or 5 or 8 or something like that. So,
The goats.
with the goats,
The goats are evil. They killed.
the demonic goats, yeah.
They killed Kenny.
They killed Kitty.
I can't think of what his character's name is.
I should
Carnav.
You
I
killed
should-
Garnet!
The moment I got.
I should name the character Kenny, just have him always die.
So-
when Kitty dies.
Now, what?
It's gonna be a running joke now.
Yeah. Now, what you also
They
have.
killed Kitty.
So, like I said, it's broken into parts, and what you want to do is come up with a time budget for each part. That way, like when you get to part 2 and you realize, well, we only have an hour left, and we got to go through part 3 to finish the adventure, you can say, okay, we're skipping part 2, or we're taking something, so you have some sort of shortcut that you can take.
A spot check or.
Yeah, or basically you can just skip it. You don't go to that encounter. You go. Now here's a rule of thumb: major battles you should allow about an hour to those, half an hour to minor battles and like role playing encounters. Okay, and then a half an hour for the beginning and the ending. Like doing the character sheets and setting up everything. So, in a 4-hour session, so you take off half an hour for doing all your BS stuff at the beginning and ending, that leaves you 3.5 hours. So you shouldn't have more than 2 or 3 major encounters, and maybe a couple of minor encounters and all that. And so if you know, for example, I have 1 hour left and I have 2 major encounters left.
Cut one.
Well, one's got to be cut. Let's go right to the big guy and go back right to the climactic battle. And get it done. So that's basically, now some of these modules actually have advice in them that says, at this point, you should have, an hour, you should have like 2 hours left at this point. If you don't, then cut this, this, and this. Some of them will have that, some of them won't. So if they don't have that advice, you need to go ahead and make your own plan. And what I would do is at the top of the part, where it says part whatever, make a note there that says, we should be 2 hours into the adventure here, no more than that. If we are, cut blah, 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 And so make some notes about how you're going to cut it, what you're going to cut, how you're going to fudge it so you can get through that, okay? Now, you also have, so inside the part, it'll have location, or it have scenes, okay? So basically the scenes are titled for you. So it's pretty convenient. So basically each one of these sections here is basically a scene, and it could be a location, or it could be, like a scene in a play, or a movie. So, and it'll describe, and you see it has this box text. The box text is designed to be just read straight, read aloud. So when they get to this part, you just read it straight through, okay? That's the easy way. That's what I normally do. I don't think it's the best way to handle it, but hey, you only got so many hours in the day. So, but what I would do in your prep is, highlight the things that are important in the box text, so that when you reset the scene, because you may want to read this through to set the scene, but then to have this big old battle and you need to reset it. Well, you don't want to reread the whole damn box text again. So have the things picked out, so you can say, okay, this is the general thing. These are the options. This is this is what the situation is. All right. So you got the box text. After the box text, you have DM text that tells you all the details about what's really going on in the ring or that scene. Included in that text, you'll see like bold words. anything that's in bold is actually is a creature, an NPC or a monster. Like here it says guards. I can't see that. A total of 4 guards in bold, okay, are blah, 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 is what it says right here. So the words in bold means that there's an NPC there, so you know, that's what you need to like prepare to have the NPC for, okay? There's notes about adjusting the encounter. So like if it's tough, if you have a really strong party or a really weak party, how you adjust it. Like this one says, for a very weak party, no backup arrives. Because normally another bunch of guards come. But in this one, no backup arrives. Very strong party, replace 2 guards with 2 thugs. And the thugs are much tougher than guards. Yeah.
What's the difference between a strong party and a weak party? Is it the makeup of the party, or is it just basically
we'll
the numbers?
get to that. The very beginning, and I'll talk about that when we talk about starting the adventure. But at the very beginning, it says adjusting the adventure, and it has the guidelines. I'll go ahead and talk about it. It's basically, in the adjusting the adventure part, well, you see, this isn't very well organized, which is one reason why you got to do your notes. But in the introduction is where it tells you what level the adventure is designed for. Okay, so you see, so in the introduction here it says it's optimized for 5 second-level characters.
Okay.
Okay, so that means 5 second-level characters would be the average party, and any variation from that, you look it up on this table. So one of the things that you do when you're one of the first things you do when you start, remember I said you have about a half an hour that you got to like do a bunch of crap.
Adjusting.
Well, one of the things that you're doing is you're getting all the stats of all the characters, right? And let's say, okay, so what are you playing? You're playing a bard, blah 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 blah. What level? You know, what faction? What's your perception roll? What's your? And I go around the table and I gather all that information. Well, part of what I'm doing with that information is I'm going to take an average. So, you know, if we have like a bunch of 3rd level characters, and so I take the average and it averages out, oh, okay, well, our average party level is 2.8, you know, whatever. Well, you round it up to 3, and then you look up on this table and you say, okay, well, we've got 5 characters, but APL, its average party level, is greater than 2. Okay, then you use strong. So basically you make note of, so at the very beginning you note whether the party is average, strong,
Or if it's like
very strong.
2.1.
We round it down to 2.
That makes a difference between having backup and having thugs.
So, yeah, exactly. So if it's a very weak party, it's going to be ratcheted down. Very strong party, it's going to ratchet things up.
For example, there was that one adventure where we had where we were a very strong party. So they had a water elemental.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the party being strong, there wouldn't have been a water elemental there.
So the demonic goat had more hit points than everybody else combined.
So,
Only at 40 HP.
but yeah, that's one of the steps that you take when you're first getting started, when you're setting up the adventure. So before, because there's a bunch of stuff you do between the time everybody sits down and the time you say meet the tavern. Right? And that's one of the things that you do, is you come up with this party strength. All right. Box text, NPCs. Sometimes there's like these little gray things that has role-playing advice for the NPC. And what I'll do is I'll prepare a card, like an index card for that NPC. So like, for example, I have these index cards in here. So here's an index card for this NPC. Actually, let me take one of this.
Actually, an index card for them.
Pass it around, show them to us. You can trust us.
Okay.
You can roll the dice on the table in front
So
of us.
now, what I would do is I had 1 hour to prep this adventure, so I did not put anything into this. But if I was going to do this right, So I've got the name of the character. I've got a basic description. Her name is Shelavasa. She's a Marl, which is a cursed aquatic elf.
In order for you to know that, you have to do your research.
So, well, how do you have it look like it's a Marl? And on this side, I would put, that information that we talked about their quirks and the pauses and gestures and description. Basically, the role-playing information that I would need to play the character, I put on this side. On the other side, I've got all the combat stats. So I've got combat stats here, and I've got role-playing description here.
In the event that the poor NPC gets dragged into the battle or becomes part of the battle.
Well, this is one that you do fight, so so it made more sense to do the combat stats.
Well, that brings up a good question. Are there times when an NPC can be dragged into a battle that isn't necessarily supposed to be dragged into a battle?
Sure.
And then what do you do as a DM?
Fake it.
I mean, how do you assign the stats?
Use commoner stats.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Because I think we've run across that
Yeah.
situation before.
You
where
do
a poor
it on the
NPC gets
fly.
pulled in.
You do it on the fly. If look, if it's a commoner, an ordinary person,
I hate playing a child.
assume 10s for all their stats and like 4 hit points. That's a normal person. They basically have +0 on everything.
What if it's a
Or
small
you
child that gets pulled into the battle?
Well, then they have minuses maybe.
Or I had in a game
Maybe
I
plus the
ran, I had
dex.
a god that actually traveled with them in a disguise as a woman. She took a critical hit. My response was, she was cut. She did not believe there were stars blowing out where she was cut. You can't. I couldn't kill her off for that either for what was going to happen. I mean, sometimes you just
Yeah.
you roll.
Yeah. So, but there are some tricks to doing things on the fly that's basically comparing it to other things. Like what you said, it's a commoner. So like if you know the character's a commoner, then you just use commoner stats. If you know that they're like a tough guy, then you consider the stats for like a thug or a guard or something like that. And it's usually, if they're not a normal combatant, they're not going to have much stats. Give them like a +1, +2 or something like that. It's not going to be. Now, if they're a badass NPC,
Like that one guy that had level 5 spells.
yeah, well, he was written up. His stats were in there. he was statted up, and so I could have looked, and that's what I did. I was like, oh crap. He had 5th level spells. He was 9th level caster, but he was just like sitting back.
You can teleport.
He could teleport. He could fly. I think he was flying at the time. Just
Like levitating,
Have
just
I
doing
killed
that.
that thing yet?
yeah, he was pretty badass.
I like to do that character.
But yeah, he was just sitting back. It was basically, and the thing basically said, if anybody fights him, he just disappears. He's got visibility, he's got flight, he's got teleportation. If he doesn't want to be there, he's not there. So.
Like the level 9 in like this adventure.
But anyway, you've got this little gray text that you can use to. But what I would do is I'd draw out of this 1 or 2 words. So here's an example. So this is Zora Culkin. Some of y'all might remember Zora Culkin. She's the woman whose house we were staying at that burned down.
Isn't she the one who got me knocked out? Because
Well, you were at her house.
yeah, the guards took her and they knocked me. The guards backstabbed her, took her and knocked me
But she
out.
was
She
asleep.
takes care of you. Feed you, clothe you,
Nah, it's not
Roof
just
over
the
your head.
house back there.
restores you,
Uh-huh.
and then all poor Zora, all the junk happens to her. All these poor fighters.
So,
Zora's the title, not a
so
name.
here's what it's. Yeah, it's her title. It's like Lord. Actually, I guess it's lady because Zora is a lord. Zora's. Zora Culkin epitomizes the distant grandeur of an old world Bowmaster noble. She is quite insightful, able to paint a surprisingly detailed picture of a person after only a brief conversation. one does not live to a ripe old age in Mulmaster without a healthy dose of suspicion, and Culkin intends to live a long, long time. That said, she feels a true responsibility for the people who populate her holdings, and she is horrified at the deaths that have occurred. So, like I said, I try to boil that down to like 3 words. You know, insightful, suspicious, you know, cares about her people. You know, just leave it at that. You know, and something about her being like grand and noble, you know, grandiose kind of. But you know, you don't have to, you know, like when you're DMing, you don't have time to be reading all that and trying to figure it all out. You just need like 1 or 2 words and run with it. Because, you know,
Breath is everything.
you don't have, and like I said, it doesn't take much to create a character. To like with Zora Culkin, I could probably like with 3 words, I could probably come up with a characterization that would be very memorable to everybody. You know, so like matronly, you know, like grandmother. She like seems like somebody's grandmother. You know, but incisive or insightful. She just has these eyes and looks like she's looking right through you.
Here, have some freshly baked cookies.
And kind of and posture. I might put a posture that she's kind of.
It works.
She's kind of stiff like this. So it's like, so I always start like this. It's like, oh, the Venturas, you've come back. Thank you. Good to see you again.
I actually DM'd one part of this adventure, the first part of it, and my characterization of her was, she was giving my mother, who was also playing in it, she was playing a monk, was giving my mother weird looks, and that's not what I intended for her characterization to be, but that's what it ended up being.
We're like, she's like, I mean, like she was gay, you know? If she was like, we could have some private time together. Alex, what the hell?
Wicked ass.
Seriously, I didn't even mean to do that. It just happened. I don't know.
Wicked ass.
Yeah, we didn't mean to rob the bank. It just happened. I'm sorry.
But I hope you can see my point, is that with 2 or 3 words, 2 or 3 little things, and you have a character that's very memorable, just like that. Okay. All right. And Zora Culkin is definitely an NPC that you would want to do that for, because she appears in a lot of adventures. She was like major in this one. She also appeared in the Breath of the Yellow Rose.
Did she appear in the last one that we did, like with the?
She appears a lot because she's basically a benefactor of everybody, adventurers. You know, she's a patron. But she hires adventurers to do stuff. You know, is what she does. All right. You'll also see in the adventures sometimes bulleted information, and that's usually. Let me see if I can find something like that. It's usually stuff that an NPC knows, but doesn't just outright says. So it's like it's stuff for you to have in response to when someone question. Yeah. So like here's one. So there's like a whole bunch of bullet points here. Okay. And here's what it says: after pouring wine for her guests, Culkin outlines the situation, stressing the following points. And then there's like 12 points here, okay? Here, I'm over 6 or 7 points. But usually it says something like this is the information that they give you, that she gives you, and she knows these other things if someone happens to ask. And it's like a whole bunch of little bullet points. What I like to do for those kinds of bullet points is I'll put to the side what question that would be in response to. You know, so that if someone asks the question, I can like look down the list and say, so if they ask, where are you from? So, you know, I can look down my list and say, where from? Ah, that one. And then I can like go to that bullet point and kind of read it out.
I'm from Rita's.
Yeah, because otherwise,
I'm from Manhattan.
because otherwise these are just, because we look at this, it's just like, each bullet point is
Wolf
like a
of
paragraph.
Jersey.
You know, so you want to like summarize these. Otherwise, when you get to this part of the adventure, they start asking you questions. You have to like read the whole damn thing before you can answer anything. So, yeah, you want to like summarize as much as you can so you can like get to it easily. The other thing to note that you want to make notes of. So far, I'm talking about a lot of things that you want to take notes about, right? And you want to write your notes on the adventure sheets. The other thing you want to take notes about is forks. So, you need something?
She's asking what that is.
I was
Oh, yeah.
hoping he would know since he's been here 20 minutes.
I didn't
You
hear
wanna-
twice.
Actually, is this a good spot to take a break?
Yeah, I'll take a break. Well, we've been at this for 2 hours.
Considering that's a fork, to do. This way. Don't walk this way. Just this way.
Walk this